The third attack of Stephen Gosson on poetry was it is the nurse of abuse. It writes stories about bloodshed, about other things, to which Sir Philip Sidney says that it's not true. ये सच नहीं है कि कोई ये कहे कि जो शायरी है वो गाली गलोच बकती है, वो बुरा भला सिखाती है, ऐसा नहीं है. But he says in return that it is the philosophy and history who do so. When you write history, they would write the true account of the bloodshed without poetic justice. So, poetic justice, at the end of any play, any novel, any poetry, there is poetic justice, which means that evil is punished and good is victorious. So, when evil is punished and good is victorious, it's not abuse you. It's great. It gives people hope. कि भाई देखो बुरे की हमेशा हार होती है, अच्छे की हमेशा जीत होती है. तो शायरी जो है इस तरह की चीजें नहीं करती है, बल्कि इसके बरक्स जो फिलॉसफी है और जो हिस्ट्री है वो बल्कि ऐसा काम करते हैं. हिस्ट्री अगर कोई नैरेटिव बताए तो उसको ये नहीं बताना है कि भाई मैं पोएटिक जस्टिस करूं. कभी ऐसा होता है तारीख में कि बुरे की जीत हुई, अच्छे की हार हुई, और जब हिस्ट्री की बात आए तो वो उसको वैसे ही लिखेगी. बट व्हेन इट कम्स द पोएट्री, इट ऑलवेज कम्स अप विद पोएटिक जस्टिस. सो इट इज नॉट इन of abuse. इसके बरक्स तो शायरी जो है वो पीस की तरफ लोगों को बुलाती है, वर्च्यूज की तरफ लोगों को बुलाती है, मोरालिटी की तरफ बुलाती है. तो ये कोई बात नहीं हुई कि कोई आके शायरी पे ये इल्जाम लगा दे कि ये जो है नर्स ऑफ एब्यूज है. तो दिस इज हाउ ही रिफ्यूट्स द थर्ड एलिगेशन ऑफ स्टीफन गॉसन दैट इट इज द नर्स ऑफ abuse. He says that it is not the nurse of abuse. Who are the nurse of abuse? Philosophy is the nurse of abuse and history is the nurse of abuse, because philosophy and history, they would write the accounts of the bloodshed, they would write the accounts of the wars, they would write accounts of other bloody deeds in history without poetic justice. But that is not what poetry is all about. Now coming to the last attack of Stephen Gosson on poetry, which was that he took or brought to his defense Plato. Plato he had attacked on poetry in his Republic. So he says that Plato इतना बड़ा philosopher जिसको सारी दुनिया मानती है, उसने शायरों को गाली निकाली, उसने शायरी को बुरा भला कहा, तो फिर ठीक ही कहा होगा, तो फिर मैं भी कहूंगा. ठीक है ना. Now he brings him to his support that if the greatest philosopher of the world banished poets and poetry from his Republic, so there must be something wrong with poetry. And there comes Sidney to the defense of poetry again. He said that जो प्लेटो ने कहा है उसने उन पोइट्स को बैनिश नहीं किया था, बल्कि जो पोइट्री को ही अब्यूज करते थे उनको बैनिश किया है. He banished those poets from his republic who used to abuse poetry, who used to propagate, write bad things through poetry. It were those poets who were banished by the Plato. And as Plato says towards the end of his work or end of his attack, that there are some kinds of poets whom he would allow in his republic. तो ऐसा नहीं था कि उसने सारी पोइट्री को बुरा कहा, सारे पोइट्स को बुरा कहा, बल्कि उन पोइट्स को बुरा कहा जो गंदी शायरी करते थे. सर फिलिप सिडनी कहता है कि प्लेटो हिमसेल्फ वाज पोइट. आप उसके डायलॉग्स को पढ़ें. when you go through his dialogues, when you go through his book Republic, you will find that there is that poeticness in his writing. So that poeticality cannot be ignored. So what Plato did actually, he banished bad poets from his Republic, not the good poets. So if there was a good poet who served the purpose of educating the people, providing virtues to the teaching virtues to the people, teaching morality to the people, bringing peace in the society, that is something which must be appreciated, and that is something Plato also appreciated. So saying bluntly that poets must be abused and attacked because Plato attacked is not right. First thing that we need to understand it, on what basis did Plato attack the poetry, and he attacked those poets who were not writing great poetry, who are not writing good poetry. If a poet writes good poetry, writes great poetry, even Plato left a place in his republic. Plato also attacked poetry by saying that poetry is the imitation. So since it is an imitation, it's a base activity. But Sir Philip Sidney refutes to that poetry is the imitation of nature, But it's not a base, a cheap imitation, but it's a grand imitation. He says that nature by itself is not beautiful. It is the creativity, it is the imaginative power of the poet which makes nature beautiful. So human life could be dull on earth, could not be more exciting on earth, but when it comes to the imagination of the poet, what he does, he would imitate it. But this would not be slavish imitation, but this would be, इंसान जो शायर लोग हैं वो इमिटेट करते हैं, लेकिन वो जो इमिटेशन है, वो जो नकल है, वो बेकार की नहीं है, बल्कि वो एक उसको और बेहतर करने की इमिटेशन है, उसको और अच्छा बनाने की इमिटेशन है। और सर फिलिप सिडनी कहता है कि जो नेचर है, जो हमारी जिंदगी है, जो यहाँ धरती है, दुनिया है, ये आज खुद उतनी खूबसूरत नहीं है जितना खूबसूरत इसको एक शायर बनाता है। शायर अपनी तख्लीक से, अपनी इमेजिनेशन से, अपनी ख्याली पावर से जो है क्या करेगा, वो उसको और खूबसूरत बनाएगा। सो द इमिटेशन ऑफ पोइट इज नॉट अ चीप एक्टिविटी। इफ प्लेटो अटैक्ड ऑन देम, देयर कुड बी सम पोइट्स हु वुड डू स्लेविश इमिटेशन, but the poetry is not always slavish imitation. It is a creative activity, and a creative activity requires skills, requires professionalism, and poetry is not art, is an art which Sidney believed is learned. One has to be skillful in it, has to develop the skill, and then he can become a poet. And once he becomes a poet, he recreates the world, he reshapes the world, he makes the nature more beautiful than it is. So if a poet does such things, he cannot be banished by even Plato. He would be accepted by Plato, and he would be accepted by one and all, and he should be accepted, he should not be attacked. And this is how Sir Philip Sidney refuted the fourth attack of Stephen Gosson on the poetry. And this was the defense of poesy by Sir Philip Sidney. It's not a very difficult essay to understand. It is in context of Stephen Gosson. Stephen Gosson had attacked the poets and the poetry, and to those allegations of Stephen Gosson replied Sir Philip Sidney, and Sir Philip Sidney also replied those 4 points and defended poetry.